Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be picking up where I left off telling my personal story about how I discovered who I am and about what I'm doing here on Earth and everything that happened in the lead up to me figuring out who I was. At this moment, I knew I was an angel and I knew I had a demon inside of my body, but I couldn't figure out what kind of demon it was, and I had done my own research and looked at demonology, looked at names of demons and what demons did and the stuff that demons have done for us in this world. And it's interesting if you read about it. Demons came up with a lot of things like weapons of war and cosmetics, cosmetology. If you look into demonology, it's really interesting. But I was just trying to figure out what demon was inside of me. And I thought I got one of my answers, the one that I went with and took it to the church, from the HR manager that I used to work with. And I'm omitting her name, but she knows who she is, and you know what workplace I was at if you watched the other videos. So I had been in the process of being investigated before I was fired, because if you haven't watched my other videos, you would know that a demon took over my body and said some things that they shouldn't have said, and it happened when it was in my body, so I have to take credit for it. Even though it was the demon, it wasn't me. And I ended up losing my job. But one of the things that my HR manager told me, because she was part of the occult, is that she told me that the demon inside of me was likely a watcher. And if you know anything about the Book of the Watchers, they were angels that were here on Earth to watch over humanity. And they were supposed to intervene when they had to, but otherwise let humanity do its thing. And so I had begun doing all my research after I snapped out of my phase, when I had rolled my eyes into the back of my head and was talking to my HR manager and the operations manager at the job I used to have. When I came to it, my HR manager told me that this demon was likely a watcher and it was likely placed inside of me at birth. So I took that and I ran with it. I started reading the Book of the Watchers. I started looking at YouTube videos on it and doing my own research. And I knew this demon was inside of me, and I knew it could talk to me telepathically, because demons can do that. And it really hated the Catholic Church, and I knew that from my interview, you could say, with my HR manager and the operations manager, is that I really hated the Catholic Church. So where did I go? I went to the Catholic Church. And so I didn't know what to do. I knew there was this demon inside of me. I knew that I had died and came back to life. So what I did is I went to the local Catholic church here in Alameda. It's called St. Joseph Basilica, and that's the Catholic church that I go to. If you want to see me in person, I go to that Catholic church still. And I wrote a note, and in my note I told basically the highlights of what happened, that I had died, that when I died, my body went limp and I saw a blue light come out of my body. And if you don't know the story, I basically told them everything that you should know up to this point. And I told them that I died, that I haven't done any miracles except for like helping kids and teaching kids that have autism, and I can help them. I've turned kids that didn't speak at all into kids that can speak. I've done some little miracles and some things that people normally couldn't do, like I had superhuman strength. And I left a note on the podium, and I told them what outfit I was going to be wearing to church on the following day, because this happened on a Saturday. And so I told them I was going to Mass on Sunday, and I think it was at noon. And so I went to Mass that day, and the next day, which was a Sunday, I went to Mass, and during the priest's homily, he brought up the fact that, like, does anyone have the Holy Spirit inside of them? And I was the only one in the church to raise my hand, and I thought that was kind of silly, because like I thought a lot of people had the Holy Spirit in them. I'm not an average. I didn't go to church for like a long time. I'm not an average churchgoer. At this time, I wasn't really religious. I was Christian, but I wasn't practicing. And so I raised my hand when the priest asked that question in the homily, and nobody else did. And then I kind of felt silly about it, but it's worth noting because I do have the Holy Spirit in me. And what followed was after the service, after Mass, I was going to talk to the priest that gave the homily. But another priest, a different priest, walked up to me and told me that he had received my note. And like I was at this point overcome with emotions and I started crying. And because I didn't know how to explain all this stuff. You know, I died, I came back to life, I realized I was an angel, I realized I was possessed. Did I believe in demons? Yes. Did I think they were inside of me? No. I thought it happened very rarely. I am not in America usually, unless like you're in a haunted area of America. And this was my perception, and this is what I came to this meeting with. And so I get into this priest's office. I'm omitting their names, but they know who they are if they see these videos. And I sit in a chair, he sits in his chair, and talking about my story maybe for a good 10 minutes. And I'm telling him I died, I came back to life, I realized I was an angel. I didn't know what to do. I knew I had this demon in me who always corrected me when I told him it was a demon. He told me it was a fallen angel. And I was new to this stuff. And I told the priest, and like, I hadn't been going to church. This was my first time in church in a long time. And I told him my story, and I told him I would like to not be in this predicament that I'm in, that I want to get rid of this fallen angel. And it was at this moment when I was telling the priest this, the priest asked me some question, and I forget what question it was, but I told him I did the best I could, and at this point I didn't realize that it wasn't me talking, it was the demon inside me talking. And when the priest is talking to me, and this goes back and forth when I'm talking to the priest, my perception always changes, my vision always changes, because the demon can pop out of me and start talking, and I don't know it's a demon until a certain point in the conversation. Or they can stay in the same place but get a little closer to them. So my vision changes throughout these conversations that I'm having. It's just one conversation, but it's from a different perspective, depending on who's talking. And I hadn't realized this. And I was telling him I did the best I could, and then I hear, no, I didn't. Or, no, you didn't. And I was like, yes, I did. And I hear, no, I didn't. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. And I thought I was talking to the priest. But he's like, were you just talking to God? And I looked at him, and I had regained my perspective, because it wasn't me talking at that point. It was the demon inside of me. And I look behind me, and I look at the priest. And I look behind me, and I look at the priest. And now the priest is like, now I believe your story. Because God was just talking to me. And at that point, I was kind of like, my mind was kind of blown, because God isn't supposed to talk to you, right? If God talks to you, you're crazy. That's what people say anyway. But God literally talked to me. And he wasn't talking to me specifically. He was talking to the demon inside of me. And at that point, I was kind of shocked. And at least the priest believed in my story at that point. But he would later not believe in me, just because if you watch my other videos, God can make people forget, and he only wants people to remember certain things. So when I have these conversations with people, a lot of this information doesn't get retained in their head, but I remember everything. Except for, I didn't remember what question he asked me that led up to that point. But anyways, throughout that conversation, the priest kept looking at a crucifixion that was behind me when I was sitting in front of him. And I could perceive, because God let me perceive, that this priest thought I had something to do with Jesus. In which I did, and that my sign, I told him when I died, I made signs with my hands before I died. And this is my sign. I'm not Jesus, but I used to work for Jesus. And now I just work for God. And I work for the Mother of God as well. And we all kind of work together, if you know my story. At this point, and I had many instances where the demon would pop out of my body, and at one point, the demon would pop out of my body and started walking towards the priest with his hand on his head like this, because the demon doesn't want to be in my body, actually. God is making it stay in my body, and I didn't realize this until another conversation I had later. But from all of the information that I gathered, I knew what to do, and I kept going to church, and God would kept telling me what the next week's homily was going to be about with the priest and further conversations that I'd have with this priest. And he did that to make me aware of who I am, and he did that so that I know that God is real and that I am this person who I am. And I'm here to help the world understand what's going on with the demonic and what's going on with Christianity and with nations around the world. And so, at the end of this session that I had, I call them spirit medium sessions, but at the end of the session that I was talking to the priest. I ended up talking about a lot of things that I'm going to conceal in this video because God doesn't want me to tell the world certain things that I know. But this priest asked me, so he's like, so what's your name here? And I tried to tell him my name, but I couldn't because my mouth was shut. And then he's like, just fight it, because it was the demon inside of me trying to take over. And I could only spell my name, and I could only spell it for a certain, like it took me like a minute to spell my name, because I kept trying to say it, and I couldn't say it. And the priest believed in me. He gave me a statue of Mary, and later he asked me what I was doing with the statue, and I was like, I just put it in front of my bed, and like, I felt like it was watching over me, like I had the Mother of God. It was a statue of Mary. And I just felt like it was watching over me and protecting me. And it's funny because like he's like, most people pray to it, and I'm like, I don't pray to it. Like I don't know much of this stuff, and this is what happened in many more conversations with this priest, is that I have this knowledge and I know these things because God is working through me, but it's like he doesn't think I'm worth it. He doesn't think that I'm able to have these conversations and talk about these things because I'm not a Catholic, and I wasn't raised Catholic, and I wasn't part of his like orthodoxy or his priestiness. Like I've talked about so many things and had so many conversations with him in which God took over my body, and that's another thing that happened during this conversation. I was doing a lot of sign language because when God takes over my body, he communicates using sign language. And a couple things that I did during this conversation with the priest, this is the first one, was I would talk using sign language, and at one point I stopped myself because I was like spelling something out that seemed like a constellation in front of the priest, and he's like, yeah, I don't really know. There's something going on with her, but I don't know. That's what he told his assistant. And I didn't really know either. I had to figure this out on my own. And at that point, when that concluded, I realized I was an angel, and I would realize in subsequent conversations with this priest exactly what angel I was and what I'm doing here. So if you have any questions or you found that hard to follow, let me know down below, and I can answer them. I'm omitting a lot of things from here because a lot of it's personal between me and God and what's going on with me here on Earth. But another thing that I can say is, apart from the sign language, the demons have a lot of things they want to say, but I just tend to ignore it because a lot of it's mocking. Like the priest in this conversation, the priest showed me how to take the communion, and he did some signs with his hands, and I had no idea what it was. But then later on in the conversation, one of the things the demon inside me did was that it mocked exactly what he just showed me. But how would I even know that? I don't know how to do it. And the demon said he was hungry, and then he pretended to take communion. But I just ignored it. He thinks it's hilarious, but I just ignored And another thing was the demon inside of me. I thought it was this demon from what, if you look at demonology and you look at the Book of the Watchers, I thought it was the demon that was always trying to get into heaven. There's a demon that's always trying to get into heaven ever since he became a demon. And it's not me, and it's not the demon inside of me. But I thought that's what it was. And that's part of the conversation as well. I later found out that this demon is Lucifer, but I found out there are other conversations. And Satan is inside my body too. And if you don't know the difference, there's a difference. There's Satan and there's Lucifer. It's two different things. And if you want to look up my other videos on that, that's fine. But anyways, that's my story. That's the one that I came to the church with. And I came to the church on the day that the Holy Spirit came to the First Catholic Church in the early church. So it's not a coincidence. This stuff happens for a reason. And I'd later come to understand exactly who I am. But what I'm supposed to do on this earth and what I'm doing right now, I don't know if it's exactly what I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep reading the Bible. I'm going to keep making videos. But I haven't had one of these spiritual sessions with God in a long time. He talks to me in the same way these demons talk to me, telepathically. So I don't know if I'll have any more of these sessions in which more things will be revealed to me. I don't know what to expect in the future going forward. But if you're watching my videos and supporting me, that's great. If you want to talk to me, leave a comment down below. If you want me to pray for you, leave a comment down below. And I'll do what I can. And I hope you enjoy these videos. Bye.